In the previous video, I talked about 5 things I wished I learned earlier in Tekken. In this video, I have 5 more things that you generally don't want to ignore if you'd like to have a smoother learning experience in Tekken. Number 1. Oki, or okie for short. You may have heard this term many times when watching FGC tournaments. It's a term used in fighting games which refers to pressuring the opponent while they are getting up after being knocked down. Oki is especially important in Tekken, as players are always put in a position where they either have to deal with oki pressure or apply it themselves. To give you an example, after Kuzia's Hell Sweep knocks down the opponent, it puts them in a position where they have to deal with oki pressure coming from Kuzia. It could be a steel pedal kick, which hits the opponent off the ground if they decide to stay, and if they get up right away, they have to deal with either another Hell Sweep or a mid launcher. Of course, there are options to avoid each one of these attacks, and you can avoid the steel pedal by tech rolling as Kuzia rushes you, or you can avoid the Hell Sweep and mid launcher mix-up by simply sidestepping to your left side. But that's the general way to counter Kuzia's pressure. Oki will vary in terms of timing and distancing depending on each player and their skill. Secondly, if it doesn't make sense to you, then it's probably frames. It's important that you familiarize yourself with frame data. As complicated as it may seem at first, it'll help you understand generally most situations in the game. For beginners, you should know that for the most part, anytime you are hit by something, you are at minus frames, meaning that you are not at an advantage to be pressing anything, or in simple terms, it's just not your turn to press. While on the other hand, if you're blocking, in most situations, your opponent will be the one who loses their turn. But that's an oversimplification, because as you may know, even when you block some moves, they still put you at a disadvantage. This is where learning about frames will help you avoid mashing while on minus frames. Generally, all running attacks are plus on block, and it's not recommended to press after blocking most running moves. And not just running moves, but most characters have their own moves that are plus on block in order to establish their own pressure. For example, Kuzia's forward 4 is plus 4 on block. So if the Kuzia player decides to down forward 2 after that, which is 14 frames, that means that even if the opponent goes with the quickest 10 frame option, which is a down jab when in crouch, the Kuzia will still get a huge reward in that trade. I hope it's starting to make sense now. Since forward 4 is plus 4 on block, and down forward 2 is 14 frames, with 4 frames of advantage over the opponent, the down forward 2 comes out at 10 frames, which explains the trade with a 10 frame down jab despite down forward 2 being 4 frames slower than the 10 frame down jab. And if you spend $4 on the frame data system, you get to view it all in real time, and you can test what is plus and what is minus on block or hit for that matter. And of course, you can always check out the frame data lists online if you don't want to spend $4 on the in-game frame data display. Number 3, the difference between sidesteps and sidewalks. Now this is simple to explain but harder to apply, and it takes some practice. While sidewalking may seem like the safer option, it really isn't, because you are vulnerable while sidewalking, and some moves are better at realigning than others. So this is when timing comes into play. Usually, sidesteps are used with blocks. So to sidestep safely, you sidestep and block and repeat that in order to get out of sticky situations at the wall, or simply get the opponent to whiff something in order to punish. But with sidewalking, you need to consider your timing a little bit more than sidestepping. Although you don't really need to sidewalk, and in some situations, a well-timed sidestep will suffice. For example, if you're just randomly trying to sidewalk Dragunov's while running 2, you'll get hit more often than not. And this is where you need to properly time your sidestep so that you can get the most out of your 3D spacing game. So sidestep blocking for positioning and creating whiffs, and carefully time your sidewalk or sidestep to avoid big moves that are forcing you into mix-ups. But be careful, if the opponent notices you're sidestepping too much, a homing move will do the job to prevent sidesteps and sidewalks altogether. This is where sidestep blocking comes in handy. All in all, don't be afraid to sidestep even if you're a beginner. You'll get big rewards out of sidestepping in Tekken, especially if you combine your sidesteps with whiff punishment. Number 4, setups. Setups are a big deal once you start getting better at Tekken. These are mix-up situations in which you force the opponent to guess. So instead of going for the full damage combo at the wall, for example, you could go for setups, where if you get the read on your opponent, you will be rewarded with even more damage than your initial optimized combo. So again, I'll use my main to demonstrate. Instead of going for the usual wall combo with Kuzia, if the situation calls for it, I can go with forward 4 at the wall, which usually leads to one of two outcomes. Either the opponent tech rolls, or they stay on the ground. Now if they tech roll, this is when they will eat the tech trap, which is down forward 1-4, which will catch their tech roll for damage. Or they can stay on the ground and risk getting stomped. I'm sure you can see the potential in using setups instead of full damage combos. If your mind games are in place, you can really come out with much more damage than your normal wall combos. Explore what your character can do and see for yourself. Every character has unique setups of their own and can be used in a variety of ways. Just have fun with it. And finally, fuzzy guards. Fuzzy guard is another term used in the FGC. It's when a player quickly ducks and immediately gets up in anticipation of a low or in hopes of countering a mix-up. Fuzzy guarding is also used to low parry quick close if you have the read on your opponent. But for the most part, fuzzy guarding is used to counter strings that have a high and mid or a mid and low mix-up, like this 2-hit kuzia string, which can be fuzzy guarded. You may not notice that I'm ducking, but if you look at the command history, you can clearly see that I'm ducking in both situations, but still manage to block both options and even evade the high option and still have enough time to punish if I'm quick enough. This may be an advanced technique for beginners and will surely take some time to develop, but it's important to be wary of it. You will see many advanced players fuzzy guard their way out of strings, which is why you don't see pros use strings in tournaments, because most tournament players are ready for such strings. And that'll be it for this video. If you learned something or would like me to get into more detail, or if you have any suggestions or questions about Tekken, please don't hesitate to ask me in the comments, and I will do my best to make video responses to your questions or even address them in the comments. You can support the channel by simply liking and subscribing so that I can keep making these videos. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.